Well, hello traders and investors. I'm Ellie Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. Taking a look at these markets from a neoclassical perspective. The model I built some decade ago now served us well for 10 years straight. Continues to serve us, probably will in the future. I don't see any reason why not. Let's take a look at this market and see what we got here. So today we had a down day. For the most part, not huge losses, 0.3 on the S&P. You got more on the NASDAQ, and the blowout was on the Russell again. That's 2 days running. The Russell blows out both the swing point lows it was trying to test. Goes right through them. Oil was up on the day. Gold and silver slightly higher. Dollar also higher. The other big thing that you saw sell off today was bonds. Let's go take a look at those. So if we pop into the TLT, for example, let's take a look at it. What we're going to find is another leg to the downside. Breaks a swing point low, 131.50. Huge ABCD structure to the downside now. And looks like it's from here back up to there and back down. So it's very large ABCD structure to try to take this lower. If you pull it over, look at it on a weekly, you got the same sort of action, not a very pretty picture. Volume expanded today as you broke a swing point low. You may get a bounce, looks like a little hammer tonight, a little bit bounce back up to test into that. But this looks broken, and the reason I bring this up is because you're seeing this elsewhere. You're seeing it in the total bonds, total bond market, a break on that one. If I go to the international bond ETF market, we're seeing a push down and a break there. You're seeing it over here in the weeklies as they start to take these down. Now, we're still at lofty levels, as you just saw in that weekly, but as these break down, that puts pressure on equity markets because faster moves in the bond market usually bleeds over into the equity market. Here's the high yield bonds. If we look at the junk bonds, also a little bit move down there and some volume expansion. Want to watch these to see if they escalate. If they do, they're going to cause some problems. If you look at the junk bonds, those high yield bonds we just looked at, really just a blip so far. Again, you have to watch to see if anything more starts to unfold. And so that's where we start tonight. The reason we start there is because that's where the risk tends to lie at this point. Let's look at the indexes. They were down. They actually, we talked about probably some sort of a bounce attempt today. They did get the bounce attempt right off the bat, and then they just quickly gave it all up. They started out at 21.44. They ended down at 21.33 or so. Volume escalates, bearish engulfing. This looks like it wants to try and trade lower now. If we look at the NASDAQ, and pulling this one up. So the NASDAQ, same thing, bearish engulfing into these big bars. Now, when you see this kind of action, right, you see it coming back into something like these two big bars over here. That's not the end of the world unless you get volume escalation and if you get deeper into them. And so you're into the high of this swing point low and this one over here. 52.17 over there, you're at 52.16. Volume on these bars, 20, 22, you come down with 19. So you're still not clipping enough volume, but volume is starting to pick up. NDX, this has been the winner all year long, the one that has led things up. Also a bearish engulfing comes into the top of that big bar, the high volume bar. Now this is the strongest index, has been. 48.21 is that number. It got to 48.31. I actually didn't get into it yet. Volume is starting to escalate, and this is going to be where a battle takes place tomorrow. You got Google after hours and Amazon after hours. Amazon sells off by about 52 points after hours. Google was up a mere, 7 points or something, 6 or 7 points. And so you're going to get a 5% down on Amazon, 1% up on Google maybe, and that again is going to bleed to the downside on the NDX. Now the real issue, and the one we've talked about 2 or 3 times this week, is the Russell. The Russell escalates to the downside, volume picks up. At this point, it's broken all the swing point lows on the daily. On the weekly, it's coming back into that bullish retest regen. It's the second time. Second time you come back, you have better odds to get deeper, and that's what it's doing. It's coming into it deeper at this point already. The last time it tested was right there. Now you're down into the 192 area. The low on that swing point high, 1168. This other swing point high comes into effect at 193, roughly 194. You close it at 1189. So you're into the overlap area. This is where, if the buyers are going to step up, they've got to show their faces pretty soon. So I think this index, I think the bonds, I think these are the places we should be focused on at this late date in October. If I look over real quickly at the world markets, and because we're all interconnected anymore, you have to keep an eye on what's happening elsewhere. I'm going to start in Europe. I'm going to start in Switzerland. We had an industrial company there today get blown out, but it actually did end up with a bullish engulfing on the general index, and that's because of banks, primarily financials, that are starting to try and pick up, not only here, as we've talked about recently, but in Europe as well. You see a flip around here, and we'll look at that sector in Europe in just a second. Let's look at the rest of the indexes. Here's the German index. German index just hanging up here towards the highs. And finally, the CAC. The CAC itself is trying to push up again as well. So Europe not looking too bad. Looks like Switzerland's going to try to get a decent bounce. Japan, of course, has been benefiting from a free fall in the yen, although it looks like, and I didn't get the volumes on it, but it looks like it did an over-under. I don't know if it had volume or not. Shanghai has been trying to sell back down after making that big move up, but you got a little reversal on a hammer. That looks like that's going to try and trade higher tonight. Look at my friends up north in Toronto. Let's see what they look like. And nothing much happening there. And over in Australia now, Australia had a big bearish engulfing a couple days back, and that led, or actually one day back, and that led to a continuation to the downside. This market's starting to look ugly. They supply China with most of the basic materials. This big sell-off was because they didn't lower interest rates, or expectation they wouldn't lower interest rates because things were getting better. So you sell the market down. That's how convoluted things are anymore. You would think if the market or the economy is getting better, the market wouldn't tank, but that doesn't seem to be the case, does it? Let's look at one more thing that is of interest, and that is the financials in Europe. And I'm looking at the banking index in Europe, the EUFN, and you can see up here testing swing point highs. So the top there is 1791, doing about 362. You're doing 261. You got over it, back under it. Wow. So that looks like a test failure at the highs. Let's see if they try and pull back. If they do, that will slow down Europe. Overall, it's starting to get worrisome again, right? I mean, we don't have huge worries, crash type worries, but we're starting to see some sell-offs in bonds. That needs to find an end. We're seeing strength in the dollar still. We haven't even looked at that, but the dollar is not giving anything up if I pull it up. And so we got a strong dollar. We got bonds trying to sell down. We have the general equities starting to feel the pressure. The Russells totally fell out of bed now, doing a full retest regen potentially on the weekly. We got the equity markets in Europe about stagnated, maybe a little bit of a bounce attempt still. Only thing that really looks really good was Japan, and that might be an over-under itself. So I don't see a lot of goodness out here, and it's hard for me to make a call that is bullish in any way. I am personally not that bearish, but it does look like this thing is going to try and trade to the downside tomorrow. Key will be is, do they continue to sell down these earnings tomorrow or not? I've got an expectation that you may see a reversal by the end of the day. And that's just a gut feel. That's not on technicals. That's it for this week. Have yourself a great one. I'll see you next time. Good night.